Hey, sports card fans, it's John, Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. There's been a lot of talk lately about the economy, inflation, and sports card prices, and the seemingly drop in prices. Are we just beginning to see the downturn? Is there going to be a big crash? Is there still some more room for cards to drop in price? Where's the future of the sports card hobby going? All these kind of talks here over the last couple months, and it's made me think whether or not, personally, I would actually want sports card prices to crash. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Again, for me, on one hand, on the little good side of me says no. Having sports card prices just completely crash. Now, I'm not saying going to zero. Nothing's going to be going to zero, but a major correction in prices for sports cards. And again, the good side of me is saying no. I mean, I've been collecting for over 40 years. I've put a lot of time and money into my collection. Now, while I'm not doing this as an investment, I don't see my cards as an investment. It's nice to know, though, that my cards are worth something. I don't necessarily buy a card based on what it may be worth, but at the same time, if I spend $200 on a card and 6 months from now it's $50, it's not going to make me feel good, because I could say, well, geez, I spent way more than I should have if I had only waited, or this or that. So in some sense, I don't want prices to crash. Now, beyond myself, there are people out there that have that buy and sell sports cards as a business. Some of the very popular YouTubers, JT Triple Crown 24. He has his own sports card business, buys and sells and things like that. If prices crash, that could really negatively impact his business. I wouldn't want that on JT. And there's others out there that, you can say, well, yeah, serves them right for coming into the hobby and just, they're not real collectors and they're just in it for the money. Serves them right if they lose their shirt. I have no qualms about that side of the hobby. I don't wish anyone ill will. That if they bought cards at the peak and now they're potentially looking at having to take some losses to recoup some funds. I'm not a negative person, so I'm not rooting for that to happen. So in some sense, yeah, I don't want card prices to go down that much. That's the good side of me. Bad side is saying the lower the prices, the better, because I have a limited card budget. And if cards go down by 50, 75%, on one hand, that's great for me. That means I can buy more cards. I can afford more cards, or cards that right now are out of my budget. And maybe those cards now can become within my budget. So in some sense, that's being a little selfish and taking a look at this and saying that, yeah, I mean, I hope prices just tank and people are just trying to dump cards, because to me, yes, the baseball cards have a monetary value. The value is obviously what someone else is willing to pay for it, okay? But there is some value to it. And it all depends on supply, demand, and all that stuff. With me in vintage, there's a finite supply. So it all bases on demand. So one of the byproducts of cards really dropping in pricings may be a lot of people leaving the hobby. That's not necessarily a good thing. Yeah, you can make an argument. Again, maybe you feel that there are certain people that shouldn't be part of this greater hobby. I'm not going to go into that. But for a hobby to continue to thrive, to survive, you need people interested in buying sports cards. And so you want the hobby to remain healthy. If you have a mass exodus and suddenly baseball cards just become taboo and who does this? I want to get out. They're worthless. I don't know if it'll be as fun of a hobby. But at the end of the day, like I said, I don't buy cards for the value of them. I buy cards because I enjoy looking at them, telling the history of baseball. Some of them I consider little works of art. So I thoroughly enjoy these little pieces of cardboard, whether a card is worth $5, $500, or $5,000. I can't say that the value doesn't mean anything to me, because I'd be lying. I think Dave Blue Jacket 66 referenced something about that if you say that you don't really care about the value of your cards, you're lying. And I agree to some extent with his comment there of you never want to spend money on something only to find out after a certain period of time that it's basically worthless. All right. You may not have a need or desire or want to sell any cards, but if you should have to, you'd want to know that you could get something decent for them for all the money that you put into them. So again, I'm torn. Do I want to see a healthy, robust hobby where prices, I'm not talking about the big spikes that we saw over the last 2 years. No, I don't think that's necessarily good for the hobby to see these huge spikes in demand and prices, because all that creates is a bubble that eventually pops. But a slow and steady growth in card prices, I think, is probably healthy. But at the same time, over time, cards would then be more expensive and a little bit more expensive and so on. And if my budget isn't able to increase along with that, then I slowly get priced out of certain cards. And that may be just the nature of any hobby that you may be involved in. But at the same time, again, I go back of, man, because what brings me to this is the new monthly feature set of videos that Mike Baseball Collector and I are doing on this Vintage 100 Index. So we started pricing 100 vintage cards starting at January of 2019. And as I'm entering data, this is what sort of brought me to this video here. As I started entering data from 2019 and even early into 2020, I'm entering prices for some of these cards. I'm like, oh man, I wish I was buying these cards back then, because man, I could easily afford that card. Oh my gosh, you mean I could buy that card for that low of a price compared to where it is now, even with the correction from the big bubble or whatever you want to call it. So I keep going back, man, I wish prices were at the same level of 2019 or 18 or 17 or so on. And again, if you track prices for any card and you go back again pre-bubble pandemic and you see what you could have bought a card for back then, versus what you have to pay now, how many of you wouldn't say, man, I wish we could go back in time and buy that card back at that price? In fact, a lot of you who have been collecting for a long time, you've mentioned it on your videos, that you show off some cards, some really great cards, maybe some higher graded examples of some vintage cards, and very common comment is, oh yeah, luckily I bought this card here 5-6 years ago when prices were reasonable. And usually another comment right after that is, I wouldn't be able to afford this card today. So I guess I don't want to say crying over spilled milk or missing an opportunity, but again, looking back, I almost wish that prices would just tank and go back to where they were. I know that's probably not the case. If you look back even at 2019, say we're at 2019, you could probably make the case, man, I wish I could go back to 2012 because I could buy them even cheaper. So healthy hobby or markets, if you want to put sports cards in a market context, slow and steady growth. So over time, prices generally tend to go up. Now, not on a big spike that we recently saw. That's not healthy growth. But slow and steady growth, you're always going to be able to look back and say, man, I wish I could have bought this card back then. So, there's probably nothing I can do about it. I don't, to be honest with you, I do not see card prices, especially for vintage, necessarily getting back to 2019 levels. I think they're going to eventually level off, maybe in the next couple months. We'll see how bad the economy goes with inflation, if that tries to settle down and become more moderate, what people's financial situations are, how that affects the hobby. But I think we're going to be settling into a quote-unquote new norm, which would be higher than 2019 prices, but below stuff that we saw in, say, late 2020, early 2021. And so that's just, where things I think are going to eventually settle. And then after a little while, they'll probably start generally ticking up slowly but surely into a more healthy sports card market. So I don't know. Let me know what you think. I know this is a bit of rambling. I didn't have any specified notes or whatever, so I keep going back and forth. The little angel or devil here is, I don't know. I just had some thoughts. Wanted to know maybe what you thought about current prices. Do you see this as a good thing in the hobby, a bad thing for the hobby? Is it good or bad for you personally? What do you think in terms of prices? Would you like to see prices crash? And I don't want to use the word crash, meaning like they're going to be worth nothing again. Take a big decline or something of that nature. Would you like to see that happen, knowing that would affect the value of your current collection, but would allow you to buy cards that you may not have been able to afford in the past or currently? Or would you say, no, I don't want prices to go down at all. One, it'll maintain the value of my current collection, and if it means that I can't buy as many cards, so be it. I'm fine with that. So I would like to know your opinion. I don't know which way really that I'm leaning. I think maybe some middle ground would be still a little bit of a further correction downward in prices. Maybe make things a little bit more affordable. Nothing crazy, but a level that would maintain a healthy sports card market. So there you go. If you've made it to the end of this video and listened to all my rambling, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Again, would love to know your thoughts about this. That's all I have for you. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.